David Szymanski is a developer from whom I unknowingly played a lot of games without immediately connecting the dot that those games were made by the same developer. I played The Moon Sliver, The Music Machine, Finger Bones, and A Wolf in Autumn years ago. Never knew the same developer would also make Dusk in the future, and would go on to create one of my favorite indie horror games in recent memory, Iron Lung. I simply love his games. Having played the Pony Factory and Squirrel Stapler from the DreadX collection, I'll probably play whatever he puts out at this point. He put out Butcher's Creek, which is a game that is mysterious in almost every one of its aspects. It doesn't stop to explain much about the world, which is a great world building technique one can see in other games of the developer as well, where you give just enough cryptic information about the world we are in to intrigue the player, but just enough that they keep questioning what they don't know, tapping into the fear of the unknown through background storytelling. Witch's Creek is a great example of that. It is set in a world where the celestial ball of sinners grew so large as to block out the very sun, where humanity is at its wits' end, almost completely destroyed through hellish scenarios, and a world where only the most depraved thrive. We find ourselves in this world. It is made clear through gameplay mechanics and environmental storytelling that our main character is one of those people who seem to thrive in this environment. We are called to the town of Butcher's Creek, tempted to find videotapes and something much more hidden and unknown. The graphics are akin to the retro aesthetic that developers like Puppet Combo adopted and made waves with it throughout the indie horror game community. The game's graphics are not as simplistic as PlayStation 1 graphics, more akin to PlayStation 2. Simple, very simple in this approach. Even in that low poly environment, the gore and the depravity can still be shown with all its minute details. We go into this Butcher's Creek, where we encounter evidence of a cult. After making our way through some guys through melee combat, which is pretty simple but enjoyably designed in this game, but that is to be expected from the developer of Dusk, we are captured by the cult and wake up in a cage in an underground facility. We will go through dark corridors fighting with enemies through attacks, parries, kicks, and throwing our weapon, using the environment to our advantage, and all that good stuff. We will be going through dark underground facilities, walls painted with blood and guts, dark mine shafts where a robed figure waits for their arrival at every corner, and so on. I think from the environment, I like the house the most, where the tight corridors and the confusing design of the suburban house, filled with enemies with a god-awful hole to probably hell in the basement, it was the place that I felt the most uneasy in. The game gives you a range of melee weapons like pipes, blades, axes, and so on. There are 3 stats for the weapons: condition, damage, and speed. Durability of the weapons are terrible, where you need to change your weapon after a few kills at most, so taking a weapon and staying with that, getting comfortable is never an option. The damage influences damage, and also whether the weapon will stun the enemy after you hit them, with speed being prevalent with weapons like knives and such. You will need to change weapons, adapt, be careful, and take your time through encounters. It is a very simple but fun system, and one of the parts of the game that I enjoyed the most. There is also the mechanic of finding videotapes and using them to save the game. However, if you stock those tapes and do not use them, you can unlock the additional doors as well, for some loot or other stuff. You also have a camera, where you can take pictures of gory scenes to regain your HP. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that one. The cult angle slowly gets developed through written notes you can find in the environment, much to any horror game player's surprise. While not to get into any details, I enjoyed how terrible the cult was, a doomsday cult gone completely psycho where they butcher and feed people to something that we do not know if it is real or a ploy by the leaders of the cult. However, as we delve deeper, we get our answers. The ending of the game is one of the most abrupt and weird endings I've seen in a video game in some time, and I say that as a positive. As you enter the final corridor, the demon, or thing, that the cult called the Watcher, jumps out at you, and the flashing crimson communion text that has a high likelihood of causing an epilepsy attack is just something that you need to see to understand how abrupt and out of the blue it is. And the final text, but the Watcher could not have known that the Tooth Sower would love it back. The Tooth Sower is us, by the way. It's eerie, it does not fit the game at all up to that point, but I still cannot bring myself to hate it. Like a weird A24 film ending, it can come off pretty pretentious, but I like stuff like that. So my main negatives to list are not with the ending. I like the angle of, what do you know? That cult was actually right all along. It brings even more gruesome and uneasy implications to an already grimy game. My main negatives are the enemy variety, backtracking, and overall a lack of gameplay to engage with other than the bare minimum. The gameplay can become very samey after a while, reminding me of a melee based Pony Factory, where the main combat mechanics are nice but are repeated over and over again, which, even in a game that would not take longer than 2 hours to finish, can get pretty boring. I think it's a fun game, but it did not manage to scare me much, and I am easily frightened when it comes to horror games. I feel pretty bad for my score, even though it is not low or high for that matter, but perfectly balanced. But just knowing that if I played the previous games of David Zimansky when the crit was established and I wrote reviews for those games, I would give them a lot higher scores. And starting off reviewing one of my favorite developers with a lower score, such as this, feels a bit bad. However, this game felt, and I don't say this as a negative, like one of the more fun based games in the catalog, where nothing is taken too seriously and it's all about enjoyable combat and fun mechanics here and there to spend a few hours. While a game like Iron Lung cuts much deeper in its horrific concepts and world, I have to admit that hitting crazy cultists with a pipe over and over again pumps a lot more dopamine than facing mind melting Lovecraftian implications in a rusty submarine at the bottom of a blood ocean.